Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I know we're approaching the 1 o'clock hour here. We're going to give it a couple minutes to let people join the call, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. We're going to give it another minute or two here before we get started to let people join in. I know we just hit the 1 o'clock mark, so please bear with us, and we'll start in a few minutes. Looks like we have a few more people joining. We're going to give it one more minute, and then we will kick it off. Thanks for your patience. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our call today. My name is Paul Kowalczyk. I am the Regional Sales Director here at LocaliQ in the Northeast. We truly appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to be here with us. As we approach the end of the year, we wanted to design a webinar to address many of the hurdles that sites face by bringing together some of the industry's experts to share their insights and experience. Today's webinar will cover key topics such as patient recruitment, diversity and inclusion, patient engagement, and medical record retrieval. Before we get into today's agenda, I do want to cover a few housekeeping items for everyone on the call. This webinar will be recorded, so you should get a copy of that recording shortly after the call via email. Please keep an eye out for that. And then at the end of the call, we will have a Q&A segment. So as we're going throughout and you're listening to the various presenters today, please feel free to drop in the Q&A any questions that you have, and we'll make sure to cover those as we get to the end of today's webinar. Just to make sure everyone's chat is working, if you wouldn't mind, just putting into the question box, what is the biggest challenge your site has faced this year in 2024? All right, I'm seeing one. Candidates no showing appointments, enrolling new patients, no show, reaching out to new patients, finding candidates for depression studies, finding new participants. These are great. Keep them coming. Patient recruitment. Well, you found the right webinar today. We'll cover that quite a bit. Finding candidates that meet criteria. Waiting on medical records. That is something that we will definitely cover today. Excellent. It looks like everyone's chat is working. That's great to see. So without further ado, let's move on to today's agenda. So we have 4 speakers joining us today, starting with Miranda Kaywood. She is our patient recruitment expert at LocaliQ. She will be discussing building trust with prospective patients through diversity and consistency. We also have Aaron Cooper. He is the site director at Elixia Health. He will share insights on a grassroots approach to bridging online and offline strategies. We also have Karen Hickson with us, the VP of Business Development at Precision Recruitment. She will be covering enhancing patient engagement throughout the entire patient journey. And last but not least, Steve Malik, founder and CEO of Greenlight Data Health Solutions, will be speaking on driving technology adoption to advance EHR data liquidity. So to start, I'm excited to introduce you to Miranda Kaywood. She is our patient recruitment expert here at LocaliQ to share her expertise on building trust with prospective patients through diversity and consistency.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miranda Kaywood, and today we'll be exploring an incredibly important aspect of patient recruitment, that is building trust with prospective patients. Trust is the cornerstone of any successful site, and one of the most effective ways to build that trust is through diversity and consistency in recruitment efforts. So to kick things off, let's take a closer look at why diversity and inclusion are important in patient recruitment, and I find that these statistics help paint a very compelling picture. So let's start with the first statistic. 54% of online users surveyed in a Facebook study said they do not feel culturally represented in advertising. In our industry, this lack of connection can mean losing a study participant simply because they don't see themselves reflected in our ads. Now, for our second statistic, 64% of online users said they took some form of action after they saw an ad that they felt was diverse or inclusive. What does this tell us? This tells us that representation isn't just a nice to have, but it is a motivator that drives behavior. And our last statistic here, Facebook research showed that campaigns with more diverse representation had a higher ad recall and 90% of simulations ran. What this means is diversity doesn't just resonate, but it sticks. And it helps people remember the message in the research site and can be the first step in building trust with patients. So, when we discuss diversity, it's very easy to focus on race or ethnicity since these are often the most visible aspects. However, it's about representing all facets of the human experience, including race, ethnicity, age, gender, language, and socioeconomic status. So, first up, age and gender diversity. It is important to ask, when you guys are setting up recruitment campaigns, do the images in your campaign include both younger and older demographics, especially in a campaign that is designed to target ages 18 to 65? Is there also a balanced gender representation in your advertising? 2, linguistic diversity. This is another important aspect. If you have Spanish ICF and live in an area where there is a huge Hispanic community, whether it's your California, your Floridas, and your Texases of the world, you should be running Spanish translated ads. By running these ads, you can eliminate language barriers and ensure that your recruitment efforts reach a wider and more inclusive audience. But this also extends out to accessibility for all audiences by including closed caption on videos, having clear readable text on graphics. This will make sure that everyone, regardless of language or ability, can engage with the ad itself. And lastly, socioeconomic inclusion. This is another key factor. I think we kind of see this all around the industry that people from lower income backgrounds already face barriers like limited access to healthcare or transportation. And we can address this as the site by highlighting that insurance isn't required to join, transportation support can be available, and compensation may also be provided. Next slide. As we focus on making our recruitment efforts more inclusive, it's also important to recognize how specific indications disproportionately affect certain populations due to factors such as genetics, environment, socioeconomic status to make our efforts more effective. So, for example, when you take a look at the data, it shows that, for example, type 2 diabetes is a lot more prevalent amongst our African American and Hispanic communities, and we need to be able to apply this to our patient recruitment. So, how can we do that? One, we can highlight the specific health risks by addressing how that indication disproportionately affects that population by making sure that our visuals and messaging are a lot more relevant and focused. So when we're choosing imagery for our recruitment materials, we want to mirror the genders, the ages, and the ethnic makeup of that affected population to make sure there is that representation and inclusivity. Next slide. So when designing your patient recruitment efforts, not only are we going to consider the health risks, but also the ethnic composition of your community to make sure it's reflected in the ads. So there's a couple free resources available. You have US Census tools that can help you analyze the ethnic and language trends in your local community. But also if your site or site network has the capacity to invest in market research, there are a lot of third-party tools you can utilize to retrieve this data. Additionally, there is a lot of public health data available, specifically with the CDC. That is a free resource that does provide this data. Paul, if you go to the next slide, this is just a quick screenshot from the CDC's website showcasing the public health data available. This specific example focuses on diabetes, highlighting trends, disparities across different populations, but it shows you where there is also the highest propensity of diabetes to give you more valuable insights when setting up a recruitment campaign. So if you have a site network with multiple sites and you want to kind of be able to identify, for site selection, as a sponsor, what might be the best studies, this also might be some really helpful tools to utilize. Next slide. Awesome. So now that we've covered the diversity component and how that can help build trust and improve patient engagement, let's shift gears and talk about another component for successful recruitment, which is consistency. A consistent online presence will ensure that prospective patients can easily find and connect with your research site. And this all starts with building your site's brand. So building your research site's brand starts with the basics. You have your logos, your colors, your fonts, and these elements might seem small, but they're incredibly powerful in creating a cohesive, recognizable brand that resonates with your patients. So first up, developing your logo. Your logo should be simple, memorable, and reflective of your site's mission and values. It is often the first thing a patient will see, so it is important to make it professional, easy to recognize, and make sure that it's consistently on all of your marketing collateral, whether it is your website, your Facebook page, just so people can start to build up that brand recognition. Two, you have your colors and your fonts. The colors that you choose in your branding guidelines will really convey your site's emotion and tone. For example, the color blue will often evoke the emotion of trust and calmness, while green represents health and wellness. So be very strategic with the color palette to align with the values you want to communicate with prospective patients. And as far as fonts go, you want to make sure it's clear and legible, but also complements the tone of your overall site brand. And finally, the key to creating that strong brand is cohesion. All of these elements should work together in harmony across every platform, whether it is your website, your Facebook page, your marketing materials, to really reinforce your site's identity and build trust with prospective patients. Next slide, Paul. A couple other tips to help build that cohesive site brand is developing pre-designed templates for different types of posts or content, whether this is for social media posts, both paid and organic through your recruitment efforts, email blasts to consistently, build up your database, or even your print and digital materials. It'll help you quickly produce the content, but also be consistent with your site brand. Writing tone and frequency. You should maintain a consistent writing tone that aligns with the overall image that you want to project. Whether it is informative or empathetic, having that uniform tone throughout your content will strengthen your site's brand, as well as establishing a regular frequency of communicating with your patients. And lastly, visual content is just as important as written content. So when you're choosing stock photos, as we discussed a little bit earlier, choose images of individuals that reflect the population around your site. But it's also very helpful to use visual clues and indicators that highlight the study's focus. So for example, if you're recruiting for a type 2 diabetes study, you want to use images that might feature a CGM or a glucose monitor to visually communicate the study's focus. Next slide. So now that we've covered some of the visual and structural elements of building your site's brand, let's dive into some organic strategies you can use to maintain a consistent online presence. So educational content, this is probably one of the most effective ways to engage your audience. This could be through creating or sharing posts, articles, videos that explain the clinical trial process, the impact that they have on medical research, but also sharing health awareness content is another great strategy. So let's say you have a lot of Alzheimer's studies in your pipeline. Maybe in the month of June, you want to make some posts for Alzheimer's Awareness Month. That can be very effective. Patient testimonials. This is a very powerful tool in building trust. Sharing real life stories from past participants, with consent, of course, can make a huge difference in giving a glimpse of what they might experience if they join a study. Behind the scenes content, providing regular updates such as study announcements, upcoming trials, or even just showing your PI or coordinators in action is a fun way to produce content for your following. Up next, health tips and advice, sharing just very practical health tips, whether it is a healthy recipe, preventative health tips. This will just reinforce your site's commitment to overall health and well-being. And lastly, engagement. I'm sure, especially during COVID, what we kind of experienced all around is there were a lot of negative comments around vaccine studies. And what I always tell my sites is take the time to respond to both negative and positive comments. Thank participants for commenting, encourage an open forum, and educate through your responses, especially the negative ones. Next slide, Paul. Awesome. And all around, your organic efforts should be complemented with consistent paid advertising because you will have so much of a targeted reach. So you can do this through a couple ways. You have your evergreen campaigns, which can just focus on general site promotion. You can either do a branded campaign just to kind of reinforce your site brand, highlight your overall pipeline and the different therapeutics you have year round, and just, increase your site's visibility so they constantly stay top of mind for online users. And then you have your evergreen campaigns that can promote a specific indication or therapeutic area. And I know someone in the chat said they had difficulty recruiting for depression studies, so this might be something you can consider. But you could just run a generic depression campaign year round, or even have a campaign that umbrellas all mental health studies in your pipeline, just so you can build up your database year round for upcoming or active studies. These campaigns are normally out of pocket for the site and they are super generic, but this is also why you would pair them with study-specific campaigns with a little bit more of a shorter duration. So you'll have your evergreen campaigns, you'll have your study-specific, and you'll have some organic content. And the study-specific campaigns are a little bit different because shorter duration, they do utilize negotiated ad funds with the sponsor. Hopefully you guys are negotiating this with the sponsor, but you're highlighting a lot more key criteria in the IE. And you can also, have compensation on this to encourage more participants. Next slide, Paul. In conclusion, a lot of these strategies will not only increase your visibility and improve your site's brand recognition, but it will build long-term trust with your community and prospective patients. So thank you for joining me today. Passing it back to you, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you for those valuable insights, Miranda. Building trust is such a crucial element when it comes to patient recruitment, and your tips were really helpful. Next up, we have Aaron Cooper from Elixia, who will be discussing how to bridge the gap between online and offline strategies, sharing his site's experience with community outreach for patient recruitment.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Cooper. I'm with Elixia Research. Thank you again for joining us today. And Miranda, thanks so much for all the insights on your presentation. Very helpful. Um, as Paul mentioned, I'll be talking about the grassroots approach and what sites can do in their community. One of the biggest impacts you can have in your community, or trying to even create more of a patient population at your site and let people know that you're there and present to be a reliable source for them, is community engagement. So there's a lot of different aspects that community engagement brings, such as building trust. You're able to have face-to-face interactions. You can build credibility of clinical trials in the area and educate people on how they can be benefited from joining them. You also get to strengthen a local presence. You can boost awareness, establish a strong presence of your research site, and be a resource to your community that they can rely on. So, what are the advantages of engaging in the community? There's different event types, and some of the things that you want to take into account are what types of events to join and which ones not to. You also want to consider event frequency and how to track events. So, talking about event types, health fairs, any type of community walks or runs, any type of charitable events that are going on, whether it's a food drive, a school back to school drive, even helping with anything that could be raising funds for a specific family or a business or a cause. Those are all things that are really good to attach yourself with. One, it's rewarding for your business, but also shows your community of what kind of resource you are to them, and it gives you the opportunity to present yourself and meet and greet with them. Another thing to take into account is event frequency. So in my experience, uh, popping up one event a year didn't really build that trust or that communication that I was really looking for with our community. So I started to dial into where we're doing events like once a month. So I know that could be a little far fetched if you don't have the designated team to do that, but you want to have a strong community presence throughout the year. So if you want to take a look at the whole calendar year and decide what kind of resources you can allocate to these types of events and how often you could be out to the public events and try to participate. And how to track your event success. So a good way is to offer raffles and giveaways to give yourself a chance to actually discuss things with the people at the event that are attending. Inquire about their local interests in clinical trials. Maybe set up some lunch and learns at your office. Invite them to join you so that way they can learn about studies, and also follow up with the participants to maintain engagement. One big thing that I would do is whenever I have a raffle, we had a list of people that were interested that we would follow up with that same week and just reach out, discuss clinical trials a little bit more personal with them, educate them some, and even invite them to have a cup of coffee and meet the doctors sometimes. So finding these events can be kind of challenging. I mean, you can go online. There's a lot of different resources other than just hearing about them. One good resource I found was joining small business groups in your community through social media, Facebook, Chamber of Commerce. Um, Also, looking at what's highlighted in the newspaper. Look at the community calendar. Look at local churches and things like that as well, if that's something that would interest of you, and try to join events that they have going on and be a support system for them. Talking about event costs, typically, going to once a month, that could sound kind of costly, but it's actually not. Typical events range anywhere from 75 to $200. And of course, there's sponsorship opportunities where you get some promotion to your site, and you can attach yourself to an event and get the additional advertising. Um, so looking at an annual budget, I mean, if you were to take one event a month and typically think about $100 to $200, that would be your annual community outreach budget. Now, the return on investment on that, though, actually is if you find one patient that will go into one clinical trial, that'll pretty much fund itself. Additionally, you can negotiate some of these costs to be covered with your sponsor contracts. So during the contracting part of the study, or even if you need to reach out for an amendment, you can ask for a advertising budget. And a lot of times sponsors will grant them as long as you can show them what the event is and how you'll highlight their study. Next slide, please. Again, so discovering the events, community organizations is a great way. Newspapers, even affiliating yourself with the radio station or any other local businesses that might be doing their own events. I think it's the same slide. I apologize. There you go. Another thing you want to do is whenever you are conducting these type of community events, you want to complement yourself online as well. So promote your events. Let the community know on your social media pages where you're going to be and what you're doing. But you can run study-specific ad campaigns as well. And you can keep a generic campaign running continuously, as Miranda mentioned earlier. And so with the strategic awareness, it'll help increase your visibility during these key events like high blood pressure awareness month, diabetes awareness month, breast cancer awareness month, things like that. And expressing patient appreciation and maintaining engagement with your database through monthly newsletters, text messages, email campaigns, happy birthdays, on a monthly basis to your patients to make them feel appreciated and engaged with your site. So talking about the success story of community outreach, Miranda asked me this question when we were preparing for this presentation today. My success story actually was I met a gentleman at a health fair, and he lost his job. He was struggling to maintain his diabetes, and he was borrowing metformin from his neighbor. I had a chance to talk to him face to face during the event, and then even follow up with him afterwards, and had him come down to the site, and we discussed some of the clinical trials and how they could benefit him, trying to find him a study that'd be good for his current situation. I was able to find a study that he'd be a good fit for diabetes. However, he didn't qualify. He actually had a hemoglobin A1C that was exclusionary for the trial. Luckily, the PI that we had was also a practicing doctor, and she had some samples of some diabetic medications that she gave him for a few months to help him out while he was going through this time in between insurance and things like that. The patient screened again for the study and ended up randomizing on an open label trial and was on this trial for 5 years. And I think back about the community engagement and how much fun it is to begin with, but also seeing that person come into the office over and over again, that someone that you met randomly, got a chance to explain exactly what it is that you're doing, then see it benefit them directly. Like, to me, there's nothing more rewarding. So these are some grassroots approaches that you can implement with your site and your community. And thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you for covering such an engaging topic, Aaron. It's clear how important it is to pair online patient recruitment efforts with community outreach and how valuable those in-person connections can really be in building trust with patients. Next up, we're excited to hear from Karen Hickson, VP of Business Development at Precision Recruitment, who will be sharing best practices on enhancing lead engagement throughout the entire patient journey.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to let you go ahead and click past this slide. I'm speeding up because we're running a little late. I'm Karen Hickson. I'm a Vice President of Business Development with Precision Recruitment. Precision is the largest patient pre-screening service in the clinical trial industry, and I'll let you look at everything that's on this slide. But the most important thing to know is that we don't require a contract, so you can turn us on and turn us off as needed. So next slide. Okay, site level challenges with lead engagement. So what I really wanted to do on this slide was to put a picture of a giant fire hose drowning people, because that's pretty much how sites feel when all their advertising is running at the same time. So let's see how we can manage that. So the first thing I would say is that you need to have proper staffing. Your staff cannot wear too many hats. I was 15 years in operations and finance at a site, and if I put that hat on, I know that your coordinator is your primary revenue generator. Anything they do other than seeing patients is not generating revenue, so please don't make them recruiters. On the flip side, you're going to have recruiters at your site. Maybe they're also going to have secondary or tertiary roles. When you're in the middle of recruitment, those roles have to slide off on somebody else. Let your recruiters be recruiters. Second is, as you know, you need an IRB approved phone screener. But what I want to talk about more than that is that I recommend that you have a generic screener, and you can have several of those for different purposes and have them approved by your local IRB. This allows you to talk to patients that you meet at health fairs and collect their medical information if they opt in to be in your database. It also allows you to talk to patients before you have your study-specific screener approved. Third, your recruiters need to have a special approach. They need to be calm, helpful, able to answer questions about the inclusion, exclusion, or any other questions about the protocol. They need to know how much it's going to pay. They need to know how many visits there are going to be, how many times do they have to come into the office, how many times there's a blood draw. They need to be able to answer those questions. And they need to do that in a calm and helpful, friendly way. That is way more important than how many calls they get through. Your recruiter is your first touch for your site. They pave the way for your subjects' trust and feel comfortable joining a trial at your site. Recruiters have to have swift follow-up. As this is what we do at Precision Recruitment, is talk on the phone. I will tell you that our experience is every hour that passes after a lead signs up, your chances of converting that lead decrease. You have to talk to people in the first 24 hours. If your recruiters can't keep up with the fire hose that's going on at your site, you need to have a plan to bring additional staff in or to go to an outside vendor. Many sites don't use the recruitment function in their CTMS system. They keep up with recruitment on spreadsheets. We all know what happens then when somebody doesn't show up for work and they can't find the spreadsheet or they've taken their computer home. So train your staff in the CTMS recruitment function. It allows really quick pickup by other staff, and it also enables you to turn over recruitment to an outside vendor with just a password. It gives management real-time information into the recruitment process. Most sites know in a day or two if the leads generated by outside vendors are presenting qualifying subjects. Monitor why leads don't join and why they don't qualify, and communicate this to your vendor. Many times the ad needs to be changed or the targeting needs to be changed. And it's better to figure this out in the first day or two than after 3 weeks of ineffective recruitment. This is another good reason to utilize your CTMS recruitment function, because it tracks those things. Sometimes recruitment happens after hours. You need to have a way for people to answer the phone after 5:30. Have a plan. If having recruiters answer the phone on Saturdays and Sundays and after hours because that's what's needed, and it requires overtime, then I would tell you you should probably use an outside vendor. It's going to be cheaper. Bilingual recruiters, you already know. If you're in an area that requires that, make sure that you have them. Next slide, please. So lead engagement best practices. The most important thing is rapid response. We utilize a 3 strikes and you're out method. So if when you receive the lead, there's an automatic text that goes immediately, hopefully while they're still holding the phone in their hand, that says, hey, thank you for signing up. We are going to need to talk to you to see if you qualify. We will be contacting you by phone today. Then you need to contact them today. And if they don't answer, then we send a text message and we send an email. The text message typically says, we tried to reach you today. When is a good time to call? That one text message, which I didn't do for a long time, and then finally said, well, I can't get these people. Ask them, when's a good time to call? You'll be shocked how many people respond to that. And it's almost always after hours because they can't take a call at work. So I would do that. The second day after no contact, we go through the process again. We give them 24 hours. If they don't respond, then we move on. So that's kind of our, initial contact, and then we go after them for 2 days. And if we don't get them, we move on, because you're chasing a dwindling prospect of that patient randomizing in a clinical trial. So the next thing that let's see, is this is the next slide, please. Well, no, it's not. Anyway, other than the rapid response and automated text email, I would tell you that you need to know your audience. So very few people, 18 to 50, answer their phone during the day. They also don't check personal emails. You receive them, you get to them by text. And I know this for a fact because I have 30-something children, and they will text me and I will immediately call them back, and they don't answer the phone. And I will text them, you have the phone in your hand, answer the phone. The response is text me back. So that needs to be your primary outreach to that age group. 50 to 65 is a mix. Over 65, don't send them a text message. They will think it is spam. And I'm there, I'm that age. Send them an email. They will answer the phone. So that's kind of an aside on which modality you want to spend the most time trying to reach your patients. So sourcing leads, there are going to be two major ways that we would do this. One is social media advertising. I mean, it's the primary mode of advertising for clinical trials. It's the least expensive, and it reaches more people than any other method. And I will say that unless you have a seasoned advertising professional on your staff, or you have a network marketing department behind you, I do not recommend you try to do this yourself. I promise you will not be able to keep up with the algorithm methodology, and you really won't be able to understand how to target specific groups in Facebook and Instagram. If you can figure that one out, you're better than me. Let a professional do it. All of these types of social media ads can be run through your advertising budget and reimbursed by the sponsor. This gives you time to just go run your site. So we could talk about this for a long time, but here's my list of requirements for social media advertising. Experiment with different vendors until you find the ones that you like. You're going to find some that are really good in certain therapeutic areas, and they're not good in other therapeutic areas. You're going to find some that are really good in rapid, fast enrolling, high subject count studies like vaccine, but they're not any good at migraine. So know who those vendors are, put them in your little list, and contract with them accordingly. Provide a way for your recruiters to receive these leads in real time. And this is kind of getting in the weeds, but it is important. Most recruitment vendors have a portal that they want you to use, which is great, except that it's not in your CTMS. And in your CTMS is the ability to keep track of why people don't qualify and why they don't want to join the study, and so that you can see what the conversion rate is for that ad. And also it keeps your recruiters in one spot, and they can get in there and update medical history without leaving one portal to the next. So that's my personal preference. But I would tell you that I think it shortens the time frame if they only have to go to one portal. If you get my fire hose analogy, volume, you have to have a plan for a rapid response to assist your internal recruiters. It can't be 2 or 3 weeks because your recruitment period could be over by then. Only some leads qualify for your study. Make sure that your recruiters know all of your recruiting studies and try to put those that don't qualify into another study. And if they don't qualify or aren't interested in any of those, try to get them into your database for a future study. At the site where I was, we did vaccine. We had an influenza vaccine every single year. And by June, we had a whole list of people for that study, and we hadn't even been awarded the study yet, just from picking them up from other advertising. So database mining, which is, to me, this is your bread and butter for recruitment. Identify subjects from your database whose medical history and or demographics aligns with your upcoming study. Contact those people just like you would your live leads, and using all 3 modalities so that you can try to get them. Typically, you do this prior to when the recruitment process really starts. In fact, I would encourage you to do this at feasibility so that you have a sense of how many patients you already have, and that you have a sense of what their racial and ethnic makeup is. It is, I think, very important for you to be able to tell a sponsor, I have 80% of the patients in my database, and this is the breakdown. I think you'll get the study, and you'll all have a head start on your recruitment. Once we talk to those people, if you're not in active recruitment where you can do go ahead and schedule, put them on a hold list. Call and talk to them every few weeks. Say, we still don't have a start date, but we'll put you on the schedule as soon as we do. Answer any questions and keep them engaged. I think if you do this, you will find that you have most of the subjects that you need in your database. And it gives you, and if you don't, it allows you to see how much advertising you're going to have to do. And these statistics are helpful in you negotiating your recruitment budget. If you have all the patients you need, but you don't have the diversity that the sponsor's looking for, then you have to go back and say, I need X dollars in order for me to do the diversity recruitment that you want. So having that data gives you a jump start, and it absolutely helps you with your budget negotiations. And lastly, I would schedule those people first because they're in your database and you've been talking to them for a while. They are the least likely to no-show. So that gets you a good jump into your recruitment, makes your sponsor very happy, and then you start processing the leads from your advertising. Thank you. I talked very fast. I apologize for that. Paul?
Thank you for sharing those best practices, Karen. We appreciate it. It's clear that engaging leads and effectively utilizing your database can really help make patient recruitment as successful as possible. Finally, we're excited to hear from Steve Malik, founder and CEO of Greenlight Health Data Solutions. Steve will be addressing one of the biggest roadblocks sites encounter when getting a patient to randomize, and that's retrieving their medical records, and how Greenlight's technology has proven successful in speeding up this process. Over to you, Steve.
Maybe I should unmute.
There you go.
There you go. Well, thank you, and I hope everybody is having a great afternoon. We appreciate your time. If you would, next slide. I'm going to share with you the problem first, and then we'll talk about the solution. The last bastion of the fax machine is healthcare. I mean, the whole system is designed around paper, forms, mail, and I don't think anyone else in their job uses a fax machine anymore. It's just amazing, and it's slow, and really, the federal government was the architect of this. So, what should we be expecting? If you would, next slide. When we talk about the federal government, there is a lot of healthcare policy that has gone into the way things work today. 25 years of this, of HIPAA and the meaningful use, the Cures Act, and most recently, the effect from information blocking. Most people don't know this, but patients certainly do have a right to access their health information, and recent legislation and oncoming enforcement has fines up to $1 million if practices refuse to provide that information. So the world has certainly changed, and what we're doing is taking advantage of that technology. If you would advance, please. And we're doing that by working with all of the various EHRs. I'm sure you're familiar with all of the names on this slide, and many more, right? And what's happened, frankly, over the many years is that these are silos of data. They just sit together, and we have worked very hard to unlock those brick walls and create a data flow that is instant and consistent. For those of you who do get the pleasure of looking through images, even if they are of faxes, every one of these different EHRs sends a different format. If you're looking just for a list of diagnosis, it can be very challenging sometimes, especially depending on if it's a chronic care item or episodic, and exactly what your exclusion inclusion data is. One of the great things that we've been able to do that our customers really appreciate is the standard data flow that we can provide in standard format across all of these various EHRs. So today, and this is certainly evolving over time, because if I had done this webinar with you 2 years ago, I would have been talking about how we can get 30% of the records this way. Isn't that better than nothing? But today we're getting over 90%, and it has really changed the entire system. So if you could advance, please. When you look at the traditional clinical trial workflow, you get patients that are interested. We just heard, how important it is to be timely and follow up same day. Every hour you're getting a drop off, and we all know that once you do get somebody interested, if you need their records to confirm whether they meet the study criteria, even things as simple as lab results or a diagnosis, you have to go get them. And that means a lot of phone calling. And let's face it, the practices that have the information many times are not motivated at all to add one more thing to their daily workflow. So it's a challenge. It's not like it happens without a lot of follow-up, which is expensive. And it absolutely has an impact, as we have heard from others today, on how many patients actually sign up for the trial. Those time delays create a lot of lack of engagement. So if you advance, please. We're proposing a new way. We are doing a new way where essentially that text that we were just talking about that goes out, we can do that instantly when you're talking to a patient, and we can ask them to greenlight, our company name, release of their records, authorize it, and provide those records back to you. We're being very conservative in saying to complete the enrollment process in 2 to 3 days. We can get the records back to you instantly. And obviously, if you would advance, all of us, if you had to make a choice, the thing about the world today versus the days when faxes were normal is that this is the age of instant gratification and on-demand everything. So when you think about this and you're trying to engage patients, clearly being faster is better and cheaper. So for us, we do this in a way that utilizes technology. I'll tell you, you don't have to worry about that. We take care of all that behind the scenes. And what we focused on is making it incredibly easy for the patient, what they have to do. And therefore, on the back end, if you do have the capacity for digital viewing and review of information, we can do that all behind the scenes with your vendor. So that obviously is important for you to keep your work limited, but it's especially important for the patient. That's one way that we get such a high percentage of the records delivered to you instantly. If you could advance, please. Thank you. So this is a summary of the benefits, and I would just say to you that when you look at the fact that we can give you a standardized view of all this information that's coming from all these different systems, that really opens up an ability to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and process this data much, much faster. And even if you're not going that far or ready for that today, just being able to look in the same place every time for basic information, meds, lab results, etc., will speed your ability to process it while we're making it a lot faster for the patients as well. And that means you're going to get a lot more patients to enroll. So I'll just tell you to hit a highlight. Obviously, you have to do this in a way that meets security and confidence requirements. And the highest level of certification is high trust. Obviously, we put a lot of attention and energy into that. If that didn't work, it would be a disaster for us. So we do maintain that level of security. And if you would advance, I have one last slide, and I'll turn it back over after this, but we wanted to show you how easy it is from a patient's perspective to be able to authorize the records and how easy it is for you to get them back. Thank you, Paul, and appreciate everyone's time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That was a really insightful presentation around Greenlight's technology and the success you've had in this space. Before we move on to our Q&A segment, I am going to send out a quick offer in the chat. Please keep an eye out. You should see a little widget pop up, which is offering you to either accept or decline a free patient recruitment strategy assessment. So if you have a chance, just look in the chat, take a look at that. You should see that pop up in there. Let me know if you don't. Miranda, do you see it on your end? It looks like it's working, and I see somebody did accept. So hopefully you all see that there. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our Q&A segment. We have about 8 minutes left in the hour that we had allocated here. So if you want to, please just pop into chat any questions that you have. Let us know what those questions are and specify, if you can, which speaker that question is directed to. I see a question here. How do you address records requests if the institution where the records are behind in processing those requests?
I'll assume that's for me. I would say, look, the most important thing about this is that we don't get into their request queue. We utilize technology and their patient portal, which all providers have now. This wasn't the case 20 years ago, but they are required through a federal law around information blocking to provide it to the patient. And we act as a proxy on the patient's behalf, and that's how we get them instantly and avoid that queue.
Great, thank you. I see another one here from Scott. I've never done database mining. How do I start?
Okay, I'm guessing that's me, since that's what I was talking about. Scott, I mean, obviously, if you have a CTMS, There are search functions. I think I'm seeing here that Aaron responded to you that you can search for patients based on medical history, medications, and age, that sort of thing, to get your initial list. But after that, I mean, that information is only as good as your database is current. So after that, you have to start talking to them. I will say that we do a lot of that for sites at Precision because it does take a good bit of time. But that's how you do is you go in and you mine for those patients in your database. And as you're contacting the ones from your initial list, you can update medical histories and you can update information. Some will drop off that won't be interested, but that's how we at my site, that's how we started, was just by the search functions in the CTMS. And then we kind of came up with the kind of questions that we wanted to ask after that. So I'm happy to talk to you about this some more.
Great,
after
thank you,
the thing.
Can I mention something on that
Sure.
quick?
Yeah, sure.
Too, just, I mean, for those that might be interested, thank you for explaining that too. But one of the other things that came about was, you mentioned earlier in your presentation about letting recruiters recruit and wearing the right hats. That's a real key to the process. And Miranda mentioned consistency too. The recruitment process as a whole, it can be really challenging, right? So if it's not like one day you can assign this person to do one part of it, and the next day it's somebody else. So having that consistent setup is going to be a key factor of getting patients in the door. I just want to kind of bring that to the table too.
Well, and I would say that,
Okay.
when I was at a site for 16 years, and we had some coordinators that were recruiters, and we finally reached a point where we're either going to have to hire some and pay for the benefits, or we're going to have to find somebody else to do it. And my site used Precision Recruitment for 15 years exclusively. We had a recruiter that worked every single day, 12 months out of the year. When we needed more, during COVID, we had 10 recruiting, but we had 1 or 2 primary, and those girls talked to everybody that went into every study year after year after year. Patients would come in and want to meet them, and we'd go, well, sorry, they're in Ohio. But so you're right, that consistency, I didn't appreciate how important that was until it hit me in the face. So yeah, if you don't have the dedication to have dedicated recruiters at your site, then you need to come up with a different solution, because you really can't use your clinical staff and move them around.
Great insight. Thank you, Karen. I have another question for Miranda. Even though we include both age, gender, language diversity, we still have issues recruiting minorities. This may be part of this population has a fear of participating in clinical research based on the past. How do we address this?
Yes, I think Scott sent that question in as well. My approach is to kind of take a little bit more of an educational spin when it comes to your advertising. I think there is a huge stigma around clinical trials. And once that is broken through educating patients, whether it's online or through community outreach, you make folks a little bit more comfortable and at ease to join a clinical research study. So that's definitely an approach you can take.
Awesome. Thank you, Miranda. Another question to Aaron. What are some strategies to recruit and retain patients who are dealing with significant social barriers, such as homelessness, addictions, etc.? They're very hard to reach, no permanent address, often no phone as well.
That's a great question. I live in a metropolitan area too, and I totally understand how that question arises to a lot of places. So looking for those type of patients and how to recruit them, I mean, that definitely does require a in-person type of presence. So being at these community events and attaching yourself to something that might have that type of crowd, food drives, partnering with the Salvation Army, even donating blankets, sheets, pillows, things like that to a certain type of foundation or housing type of community can help reach those types of people. And then retaining them, that takes a little bit more effort. There has to be some type of plan of communication, being able to know that someone should be somewhere at a certain day or a certain time for a visit per se, and arranging transportation for them or providing them, the right type of travel means, whether it's a bus token, bus fare, or cab fare, things like that. We use Uber Health at our site. I do have a number of patients that don't drive, and having pre-planned communications. So I do have a couple of patients that kind of fall into this category. And, we schedule things like between 2 and 3 o'clock on this day, please give me a call. And I've even worked through trying to help find resources for them to be able to make a phone call. I have a handful of patients that live in like a shelter type of scenario, and we've reached out to the shelter to offer any type of reimbursement that might be necessary for them to be able to do so. And also made arrangements like saying, trying to establish that we do need to have this type of communication for the patient safety. And that's been pretty successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. And last one here for Miranda. How can we reach patients when a trial is done virtually?
Debating if this is more of a question for myself or for Karen. I would definitely say if you're doing a decentralized trial, email is going to be very helpful in continuing to engage them. There also are ways to set up a campaign for like people who have maybe recently engaged with a study. I know Pauline included in it earlier, but you can almost do like a pull of your CTMS and kind of upload it as a lookalike audience. And what Meta does is they parse the data so everything stays completely HIPAA protected and regulated, and continue just to be top of mind in doing a branding campaign. But email and text message might be best with reaching and retention.
Awesome. Thank you, Miranda. And thank you all for joining us today and contributing to such a meaningful discussion. We hope you found the insights shared by Miranda, Aaron, Karen, and Steve valuable as you prepare for the upcoming year. Quick reminder, this recording will be shared to all attendees. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anybody on the panel. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.